I think, to me, the magic of plein air painting is in the relationship between the artist and their environment. It's not so much about the painting itself, but about being present in the moment. Just detaching from the rest of the world and truly taking in a space for what it is. Gives you time to appreciate and reflect and time to breathe.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Foltz Studio. I'm Alex Foltz, and today we are in Montgomery. We're going to do a nice little river scene here. What I really like about this scene is that it's a bit more open. We have some nice sunlight. There's the tiniest hint of a mountain in the back, so we're going to get a chance to do a scene that's got some nice depth to it, where our eyes can flow out of the scene and into the distance, and I think that's going to be really nice. So as always, we're going to start by staining our canvas, so let's jump right into it. Now, just as a reminder, we are doing all of this with oil paint, and we are using mineral spirits to thin our paint down. And I'm going to do a burnt umber stain, which will give us a nice sort of brownish orange ground to work on top of. And I'm just thinning that down with mineral spirits, and I'll scrub it on. This is going to help kind of push that white back, so we're not staring at a bright white canvas the whole time. But in case we miss any spots in our top coat, this brown is going to look really nice, just filling in the gaps. So it's always a good go-to. Now I'm excited about this scene too, because we're kind of facing into the sun a little bit. So we get all this really cool backlighting going on. The way that the rocks and the water are going to catch the light in this scene is going to be, really satisfying if we can pull it off. But one of the things to remember when you're out painting on location is that it's really about the experience more than anything. Of course, hopefully we come out with a good painting. But either way, we got to spend an hour or so in a really beautiful spot, and that's worth it all on its own. Go ahead and wipe this back so we have a nice dry surface to work on. Here we go. And for safe measure, I'll wipe it one more time. There we go. This will be a nice light ground. We don't want it super dark because this is not a dark scene. And we will waste no time. Let's go ahead and get into sketching out this composition. So one of the things that is pretty commonplace when you're looking for a composition is to kind of put things on your third lines, right? So I know I want to get that mountain, so I'm going to put my horizon line probably down here, roughly. I'll just mark that in. And then I'll use this tree and mountain to kind of set the scale of my whole scene. So let's see, that pine tree right there, I really want it to sit right about here. And we've got a nice rocky outcropping there. Now that I know where that tree is going to be, I can go ahead and sort of build everything else around it. Yeah. And what a gorgeous time of year to paint. I mean, the temperature is pretty reasonable. The colors are beautiful. It really doesn't get much better than this. And if that's where my trees are, then my mountain is going to go right about here. I think I'm going to give it a bit more of a peak than it has, just because that feels like it'll be a little more interesting. And then in the back, we've got some trees with some beautiful color on them. Now as we come down here, the river wraps around a little bit. And probably comes to about right here. Some nice big rocks here in the foreground as well. There we go. I don't want to take this sketch too far. I want to give myself plenty of wiggle room, opportunities to sort of move things around to wherever I think they'll look the nicest. So I'll be careful as I'm painting to not set anything in stone here. Okay. I like this quite a bit. All right. So that feels good for our general composition. Before we get into applying color, I'm just gonna take some of this paint out in my lightest areas so that I don't have to fight this this brown stain if I want to add pure white or something like that on top of it. Okay. And there we go. Now we can jump right into the colors. So lately I've been really enjoying starting with this large round brush. It can give me some nice sharp marks if I use the tip, but really broad marks if I use the side. So it's pretty versatile. And I want to start in my darkest area, which is going to be right around here. So the nice thing is we've got this nice dark tree, and it's sitting right above these bright sun-bathed rocks. And that's going to allow for some good contrast right there, and it'll make a really nice focal point for the painting. So I'll mix up a dark green, and we can start laying in that color. As I was saying earlier, I'm using that broad side of the brush to cover really big swatches all at once. And as we move out from that shadow, they start to warm up just a little bit. So into that same mixture, I'll add some of my orange. And we'll go ahead and take this color right on over here. All right. Again, I'm kind of moving from my darkest colors into my lightest colors. So I'm just going to keep mixing straight into this same pile, and we'll kind of push it a little more yellow. Okay. Now the yellow we're using today is cadmium yellow pale, I believe. And it's not a very strong yellow. So you tend to have to go a little heavy-handed with it. That's okay. And we've got some slightly darker rocks right over on this side. Now this color we use for our tree up here is a perfect fit for a lot of the water. So while I've still got some of that on the palette, I'm going to go ahead and get some of that water roughed in. It sort of starts to become a little more broken up and it catches a lot of light over here, but right in here we've got this beautiful clear water. We can see right to the bottom of it. And as it gets closer to us, we can kind of, it gets a little lighter where we can see those rocks down through the water. So I'll put a little more yellow in there, sort of lighten that color up. And I'll lay it on a little more transparently. There we go. That feels pretty good. And we'll fill in this gap right up here. Now off in the distance we have some more trees, but we want to push those back and make them feel like they're a bit farther away. So I'm going to add some blue and red into this color mixture and cool it down a little bit. Anytime you want an element of your painting to appear like it's farther away, you kind of want to make it lighter and a little bluer. And let's go even lighter and bluer than that, huh? How's this? That feels better. I think that'll work nicely. All right. I want to get that mountain in there too. And that mountain needs to look like it's even farther away, so let's make this mixture a little lighter. And how does that feel? I think it could go lighter than that. There, that feels better. There we go. I like that. Now see how even though we don't have the sky or anything else in there, right now that mountain sits back in the scene. Feels like it's quite a bit farther away than all of this stuff in the front. That's exactly what we wanted. And before we leave our nice blue mixture that we've worked up, might as well get some of the sky going. So I'm adding just a bit of white to that to act as the shadow color in our clouds. And notice how the shadows in the clouds are still quite a bit brighter than the mountain back there. And I'm kind of just picking a shape that I think feels nice for this. Clouds move way too fast to try and paint them exactly the way you see them, so kind of just have to make a decision and stick with it. All right, now that we've got in there those cloud shadows, we can go ahead and get a nice sky blue going. So I'm using my ultramarine, just a touch of it, in some of my titanium white paint. That'll give me a beautiful sky color. Again, you want the sky to be nice and bright. Much brighter than my clouds. Much brighter than the mountain, of course. Just a hint of it over on that side. And we can't forget our sky color up top. I'm kind of working this out of order a little bit by jumping into some of my lightest colors now, but that's okay. We can always come back to our darker colors afterwards. And once again, while we're on it, why don't we go ahead and get some of those highlight colors for the clouds. Now this will likely be some of the brightest spots in the whole scene. So I've taken my titanium white and a little bit of yellow, and I'm just going to outline the tops of these cloud formations. Not going to be too careful with this. I just want to get something in that feels good. We can always add a little bit more to these later if we want to. But for now, just having some idea there is good enough. All right. Ooh, and we've got some nice light on that mountaintop, and I like the way that looks, so let's lay a little bit of that in up here. Try not to go overboard with it. Now this distant bank over here, it's all covered in fallen leaves and pine needles, and I really like that it gives a slight pop of red in the distance. All right. And while we've got some of this red on our canvas, or on our brush rather, we've got a lot of red right here in the foreground. We'll go a little bit brighter with that. Give it some color as it comes forward. And that can help make it feel like it's a little closer to you. It's got some extra color. There we go, and we'll pretty that up later. Eventually, we want that to look like a bunch of fallen leaves. I know it looks like a red blob right now, but just a few well-placed shadows and highlights in that area will totally transform that later. So while we've got the opportunity, let's get on to our focal point. And really what I want to focus on is this bunch of rocks right here. The light keeps catching them and it makes this beautiful glow that I really, really like. So let's go ahead and establish that glow a little bit. We'll make a color mixture that kind of leans towards orange. And we're just gonna scrub it in right here. And that'll help push all of our colors that we put on top of it a little bit into that orange realm. And it'll help sell that idea of a glow later. Now these other rocks, these big ones that are a little closer to us, these ones are a lot more blue in the shadows. And I kind of like how different they feel from one another, even though the rocks themselves are basically the same color. We'll pull some of that back. Let's move this rock right over here. And we have another one back over here some more. And as we move over to the side, these rocks, I kind of want them to fade out into shadow just a little bit. I kind of want to focus my light right there in the middle. I think that would look really nice. So as these rocks move over, they'll become darker and a little more gray. And we'll do the same thing to the rocks in the foreground. Again, we're going to kind of build that vignette in there. We're getting a little bit of it in real life that we can see, but we're going to pump it up just to make this a tad bit more satisfying. Now, before we move into actually working in all of those little rocks, I want to kind of get this bright orange glowing tree in there. I just really love how intense that color is and how it kind of pulls you out into the distance. All that light is just catching in the leaves. I really, really like that. So we'll get a hint of that. There we go. And we'll make this tree over here kind of similar, but maybe a bit more yellow. And why not a pop of some of this color over here as well? All right, we're starting to get a really good foundation going. Now, I'm going to go ahead and move on to my flat brush, and I want to focus in on these rocks here. That's the most important part of this scene to me, and I want to make sure that I get them looking the way that I want them pretty early on. I really love all that orange and green glow that's kicking up into the bottom of those rocks. So I want to make sure to keep a lot of that color in my brush when I paint the shadows. And it'll kind of come back here into these rocks as well. Now that we've got this, let's go ahead and work on those rocks a bit. Now the areas of these rocks that are catching the light are so intensely bright. I don't want to start with my brightest. I always like to work my way up to it. But I'll get myself a nice bright-ish color. This rock back here is catching some light. It's got a bright color on it that's not quite as intense as some of the rest of it. So I'll start there. And I'm using that flat brush so I can sort of carve these shapes out. And we've got the same thing with this rock right here. These flat brushes really do wonders when you're painting large bunches of rocks. You can kind of get away with just making a few marks piled up on top of each other and letting the brush really do the work for you. There we go. And see how just a few marks really starts to make that look like a whole bunch of rocks. I'll soften that just a bit. And again, while we've got this same color going, I'll change it up just a little bit. I'm going to cool it down with some blue and some alizarin crimson. And we'll mark in some of these rocks here in the foreground as well. Again, I kind of want to tone them down to create that vignette I was talking about. So I'm not going to use that like full intensity color that I'm planning on using in the main stones back here. And you might be able to see again how these rocks here, the highlights are a little lighter than this, and then they'll get even brighter when we move up into our main ones. All right, I feel pretty good about that. Now I want to get a super bright color. It's almost white. That's what I'm going to use for the rest of these rocks. And these kind of scenes can always be a little, especially the backlit scenes, can be a little tough because it's harder to see the scene coming together as you're painting it in the same way as a scene that's sort of lit in front. You kind of just have to go with the flow, trust the process, and keep your fingers crossed a little bit. Then we've got the tops of these rocks. There we go. And this other one right next to it. Okay. Now I think I like that. All right, feels like we're getting somewhere. We'll increase the brightness on these rocks back here just a little. And of course our two big rocks in the foreground, they need a little bit of light too. So I'll get that on there. But probably the biggest thing that's sort of holding this painting back at the moment is this area of the river where all of that sunlight is reflecting off of the water. So that might be a good place to focus as soon as we're done with this. All right, let's go ahead and get some of that mixed up. Now, really, in reality, that color it's pretty much white. I want to make it a little less intense so we don't pull all of our focus away from these foreground rocks, because I really, really like those. So instead what I'm going to do is mix a very, very bright blue and use that for most of this area of the river. Then we can come in and add little bits of white on top of it. There we go. And over here, notice how we can kind of use this blue from the river to frame these rocks out a little better. So they're just a little bit easier to see. Ah, there we go. I love seeing that sun come back. Every time it comes back, I'm trying to take like a little mental snapshot so I can remember what it looks like when it disappears again. I think I want to bring out a little bit more light right up in here. Love the way that looks. All right. Now I know this kind of looks like a mess right now, but once we start bringing the same light that we have on the rocks into the other elements of this scene, it's really, really going to pull it together. Before we do that, I'd like to fix this color in the water just a little bit. I'm not quite a fan of it. We'll get ourselves a nice deep green. And let's just kind of work that in over here into the water. Again, sort of using these colors to frame out these other elements like the rocks and stuff. Let's get that even more green. There we go. And as we come forward, I'll kind of let off on it a little bit. I want to keep some of this brown in here because what I can do is use this same deep green that I'm putting in the farther part of the water. I can come in here and create little shadows and make it look like there are rocks just under the surface right here. Again, I'm using roughly the same color that I used back up in here, but just these little tiny sort of hash marks will give the illusion of like some rocks just sitting under the surface. There we go. And now we've got all that settled, so let's go ahead and bring some light into this patch of leaves and into the trees in the back. I think that's going to be the biggest change for the better here. Now I want to make sure that these areas of light stay nice and pale. We have all of our super bright colors sitting in the shadows, or rather our very vibrant colors sitting in the shadows. So we want these brighter colors to be a lot less saturated. All right, let's see how this feels for the tree here. There we go. And along the same kind of lines, we'll do the same thing with this yellowish tree over here. Now, our yellow and orange tree over here, I want them to kind of pull your eye in that direction a little more. So I'm going to do the same thing with them, but I'll kind of put just a little more color into these highlights. That'll kind of help give it a little more weight on this side. Get that bright orange to really grab your attention. There we go. I really love the intensity of that. You know, sometimes while you're painting, you think one thing is going to make the best focal point, and then something else does entirely. And I'm actually starting to really, I'm a big fan of this orange tree. I think that orange tree could make a really nice main focal point to draw your eye out. So we'll give it a little more attention and just see what that feels like. reload our yellow. And you've got some beautiful bright green right up on this hill. There we go. There, I really like that. I feel like that might look good over here. And it kind of bounced back and forth as the light shifted, but I do remember at one point there was a little bit of light on these grasses over here, and I did like that. And again, I don't want to overdo it with all this light. I mean, there's an awful lot of it in the scene, but I'm kind of using the light as a tool to direct your focus towards a specific thing. So if I just kind of scatter it everywhere willy-nilly, it'll lose its power. So try to be careful not to put it everywhere, just in the areas that feel like they could use a hint of it. I'll bring some of that green water back up here too, just to break this up and make it feel a little more natural. All right, and now we can kind of come into this little area right here and get that look of all that backlight on those fallen leaves. This is like a super tricky thing to do. I'm not even sure I'll be able to get it quite the way I want it. But I'm going to give it a try. And actually, one of the things I can do before that is just deepen some of these shadows and make them a little more eye-catching. Darker shadows kind of like tend to bring things forward in a scene. So if we go in here and kind of darken up the shadows on a few of these rocks. There we go. That should help kind of bring them closer. Yeah. That feels pretty good. Same thing there. And it wouldn't hurt to darken up these shadows too. I like that. Now let's give our fallen leaves a little bit of love here. So I'm going to start with almost just pure cadmium red light. I'm just going to scatter it in random places. When you're looking at all these fallen leaves, sometimes the light kind of just passes right through them. And if you're seeing that, it almost always gives you this really intense orange glow. Super, super vibrant. And as I come forward, I kind of want to make a slightly darker version of that same color. Again, we're kind of just going to scatter that around here and there. Especially around the base of these rocks where they're sort of casting a shadow onto the leaves. Again, we don't have to paint every individual leaf. If we place these little brush strokes in just the right spot, we can start to just give the illusion and the feeling of a bunch of fallen leaves. And that's really all we're looking for. We just want to capture that feeling more than anything. Then as we move back towards the light, I'll get a much brighter color in here. And why not? Put a little bit of that same color up on this hill back here. Now as a finishing touch, I'll grab a little bit of a shadow color. And I'm just going to bring some shadows back into some of the areas that are kind of missing it to help break some of this up into smaller shapes. Just a little bit. Doesn't take much of this. And let's tone that back just a touch. There we go. Just a little bit of those deeper shadows really help kind of break this up, make it slightly more believable. And as a final touch, we'll go ahead and add some trunks to these trees in the back. They need them. And shoot, why not a few sticks here as well. This guy could use a trunk. And A few over here. And as a last little touch of detail before we sign this painting and call it finished, I'm just going to take my palette knife and I'm going to scrape in some tiny little sticks and branches, and that'll just help make it look a little bit more noisy and complex. Again, it's the illusion of detail that we're going after. We'll do the same over here. And right in the leaves. Again, kind of just doing this randomly, little tiny marks all over the place, just to give the sense of some kind of detail there. And with that, I think we can call this piece done. Once again, another great spot. It was nice to get a little bit of sun today, and to be out on the river is always a great time. We had a fun time painting. In a lot of ways, this I think was one of the more challenging locations that we've done, just because any sort of backlight scene on the water is tough to capture, but we had a great time, got a good painting in, and I just wanted to thank you all for coming and hanging out with me today. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.